Welcome to the Festival of Dangerous Ideas podcast. My name is Danielle Harvey and I'm the festival director. FODI is the original Disruptive Ideas Festival based in Sydney, Australia, that aims to bring to light important conversations that push the boundaries of conventional thought. FODI gathers the world's best experts, innovative thinkers and mischief makers to provoke and inspire curious minds. Cultural critic Roxane Gay consistently challenges predictable opinions and urges us to embrace danger and the comfort of dissent. But in an age of polarised opinion, this often comes at a personal and professional cost. Courage is an essential ingredient, but it can only take you so far. When the tide of viral criticism is both toxic and overwhelming, it can seem rational either to just give up on nuance or withdraw. So what happens when we run out of intellectual oxygen? What does it take to stand your ground and fight for complex and difficult ideas? This is the 2024 talk, How to Have Dangerous Ideas, with Roxane Gay, followed by a conversation with journalist Narelda Jacobs.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be back in Sydney again. Nice balmy weather. And it's also a pleasure to be here at the Festival of Dangerous Ideas, which, as I'll mention later, sexy title. I thought I would share some of the more extreme responses that I've had to my work. When I was teaching at Purdue University in Indiana, a man called my department chair, and then the dean, and then the university president, to tell them to make me unblock him on Twitter. I didn't know him at all. And the reality is that when I was on Twitter, I blocked thousands of people for thousands of reasons, and I don't care, I would still do it. I, of course, ignored his request and was fortunately supported by my employer, but I decided to look this guy up. To my alarm, he lived a mere 45 minutes away in a small town just outside of Indianapolis. The banner image for his Twitter account was an image of an AR-15 rifle. The threat suddenly was not theoretical. I was unsettled, to say the least. 4 or 5 years ago, I started receiving truly unhinged emails, and that's saying something because most of the emails I get are unhinged, from a man named Martin. He used his full legal name, which is to say he wasn't interested in hiding who he was. He didn't believe he should hide who he was. He spewed all kinds of racist and misogynist tropes and conspiracy theories, and then he started mentioning my then girlfriend and now wife, who is Jewish. As you might expect, he added some anti-Semitism in the mix for variety. Martin, or Marty, as I like to call him, was persistent. Some days he would send 2 or 3 emails, other days he would send dozens. Sometimes the email was just a vulgar subject heading like, all N-words are apes, or fat ugly monkey. And then he started emailing my wife, too, with similarly despicable missives. I shared this with my brother, and he had a friend in law enforcement do some research, and we learned that Marty, was a known problem, mentally ill, and a horrible, unrepentant racist, which is a deadly combination. His brother was a CEO of a small company, so my brother, also a CEO, reached out to him, like executive to executive. No response, nothing changed. Martin's family, it seems, had resigned themselves to his abhorrent behavior, and the same was expected of me. But I didn't want to resign myself to this behavior at all. I was unsettled, to say the least. I was scheduled to do a panel at a major magazine-sponsored festival, and a few hours before I was to join my fellow panelists on stage, I was told that there had been a threat. It was very vague, but they also said there would be security. I didn't think much of it. Threats happen. I wish this wasn't so commonplace, but it is, for some of us. When I arrived at the venue, a security guard began following me, a lovely person. During the event, they stood at the foot of the stage, ever vigilant, and when the event was over, security stayed with me until I got in the car and was whisked away. It was then, as I drove away, that I realized it wasn't the panel that had been threatened, it was me. I was unsettled. At a book festival, I received a similar threat, and a tall, brawny state trooper with a big neck stuck to me like glue as I spoke on a panel about activism, book banning, and free speech. The irony was not lost on me. As a professor who has largely taught at state universities, my office address is public information, which means I also get handwritten missives from angry cranks, reams and reams of pages of lazy, reductive thinking, bland insults, and vows to get me fired from my job, where I'm tenured, so joke's on you, I can't be fired. Or fired from the New York Times, where, haha, I'm not an employee. Or fired from the planet if they get around to it. Beyond the specific threats, there is the constant roar of social media trolls, critics, and ideological purists who want to harass, insult, disagree, or otherwise take issue with me and or my work. For years now, I have regularly had armed security at public events. I can look out into the audience and see them standing on the periphery of the space. Oftentimes they're in the wings, watching me, uniformed or plain clothed. It should make me feel safe, but it doesn't at all. It mostly makes me sad that this is the state of the world. I am more aware of my mortality than I ever have been, but it should not be this way. Unfortunately, this is not a unique story, and in truth, all of this is far more than unsettling. When you're in the public eye, even to a small extent, you expose yourself to feedback. You make a call and receive a response. This goes with the territory, we're told, and I accept that, yes, we are not writing into the void, and that if we're willing to offer ideas, we must receive them in return. But what I don't accept is that enduring constant ambient violence is the only way to navigate public discourse. Now, I'm just a writer. Other than ER physician or astronaut or host of the Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, writing is the only job I've ever wanted.
Excuse me.
True story. I really loved that show growing up. I never really thought being a writer would actually be possible, but I wrote regardless, fiction, nonfiction, long form, short, and over the years I've developed a readership that continues to grow. There is no way to anticipate this sort of thing. Most of us writers toil in obscurity. We have all kinds of ideas. We know, hopefully, how to communicate them, but we don't know if anyone will care. People often call me fearless, but I'm not at all. I'm afraid, but I write what I want to write anyway. I think I'm just fucking stubborn. As I get deeper, oh, thank you. Yay, stubborn people. As I get deeper into my career, I should feel less afraid to speak up, but instead I feel more afraid. And what I'm afraid of is not disagreement or even trolling or that kind of petty harassment. I'm afraid for my life. I'm afraid for the lives of my wife and my family. All of this is a bitter, chalky truth that I don't know how to reconcile. Being a writer, a Black woman writer with deeply held opinions, should not be a dangerous proposition. It shouldn't be dangerous to be outspoken or provocative or even contrarian. It should not be dangerous to think publicly, and yet here we are. Now, I've always been opinionated. I have opinions on the economy, the presidential election, the environment, the Oscar nominees from one year to the next, what kind of car you should drive, whether or not you should quit your job, who you should date, and yes, how you should wear your hair. Even my opinions have opinions, and I come by this so honestly. I get this from my mother, who is even more opinionated than I am, and she will tell you all the time. Like most people, I dig my heels in about what I believe. It's not that I'm unwilling to change my perspective, it's just that I'm generally right. For example, many years ago, J.Lo was robbed for the Oscar nomination for her role in Hustlers. She deserved that Oscar for her physique alone, but her acting was pretty good too, and I will die on that hill. Most of my work resides at the intersections of identity, social justice, and pop culture. I'm progressive, though not nearly as progressive as I could or strive to be. The ideas I write about should not be considered dangerous at all, and somehow they are. And so here are some of these supposedly dangerous ideas that are, frankly, a bare minimum set of conditions for an equitable world. Women are human beings and should be treated as such. We should be free to move through the world without fear of violence. We should have autonomy over our bodies. We should have reproductive freedom. We should receive equal pay for equal work. We should be supported in parenthood with parental leave and subsidized childcare. If we're dealing with infertility, we should have access to reproductive technologies to help us make a family. We should do whatever we can to save our planet where temperatures are rising at an alarming rate. Racism should be so abhorrent that people are ashamed to admit that they're racists. Representation does indeed matter. Everyone should have access to health care that they need regardless of their financial circumstances. People should be free and safe to express their gender identity. People across the spectrum of sexuality should be free to love and marry who they want. Our public spaces should be accessible to people in all kinds of bodies. No one should be going hungry or homeless or have to ration insulin because they can't afford to refill their prescription. And everywhere there should be a robust minimum wage that supports living well for all families. And billionaires shouldn't be a thing, and that's frankly why the ocean keeps attacking them. I could go on, but you get the gist. Most of all, I am a realist who longs for a better world for as many people as possible. We are each part of a global community, and we cannot lose sight of that. Some people might call these ideas radical, but it is not at all radical to believe that we should lead our lives with decency and fairness. The thing about social justice is that much of what we believe in are matters of grave importance, human dignity, and all too often life or death. We believe what we believe down through the marrow of our bones. And so it's hard to compromise on things that we believe are critical to allowing as many people in as many places as possible to thrive. The little fly in the ointment is that people who hold opposing views also believe it's hard to compromise. They also believe that these are matters of grave importance, human dignity, life and death. So how then do we find middle ground? And how do we reach that middle ground without resorting to violence? How do we talk about all of this without framing our ideas as dangerous? It's a difficult question, but one to which we sorely need an answer. In the United States, something happened in 2016 when Donald Trump was inexplicably elected president. A wound that was already there was torn open, and everything rotting beneath the skin of the country was allowed to fester openly. Political divisions became even deeper and more pronounced. Now it often feels like no matter our political affiliation, we simply cannot tolerate other points of view. Our socio-political differences have become rigid and weaponized. We refuse to believe that differing points of view hold any merit. Sometimes they don't. Everyone is talking, and very few people are listening. Now, I don't believe there was ever some mythical time when people with radically different ideologies were able to break bread, but it hasn't always been this calcified. We are in an age of inelasticity, and the danger of inelasticity is that we are becoming unyielding. And if we're not careful, we are all bound to break, and the world is going to break right along with us. What's worse is that this inelasticity exists not only across divisions, but within communities of like-minded people. Either we are entirely aligned or we have nothing in common. Either we offer unwavering allegiance to our ideologies or we are traitors. It's all very discouraging because progress is not made through a refusal to bend or listen or compromise. Not only are we inelastic, there is a shocking abundance of ideological impermanence. If you don't personally see someone on social media, for example, speaking on a given issue, then you decide that that person is silent and shirking their responsibility to speak up. Or worse, if you don't account for every person's reality when speaking on a given issue, you might as well say nothing at all. This can all be quite exhausting, and this inelasticity and impermanence are more silencing than any other discursive forces at work right now. These modes of discourse used to mostly happen online, but now they're spilling into our everyday lives. If, for example, you say that you enjoy peas, there is someone out there who will scream in your face, "Why do you hate carrots so much?" and want to see them banished from the face of the earth. It's all wildly disingenuous, argumentation, and deeply bad faith. It's a perspective that demands absolute fealty to whatever a given person believes. It demands that whenever we speak, we have to account for every reality, or we are somehow being disloyal or discriminatory or otherwise lacking. This mode of discourse further assumes that what we believe in and our faith in what we know are so fragile that they cannot withstand thoughtful engagement. If you offer any critique of certain ideas or communities or people, all of a sudden you're a bigot. The plot has been desperately lost. There is no air to breathe under these circumstances. And what happens when we run out of intellectual oxygen? What will be left? Now, in the marketplace of ideas, we often talk about the freedom of speech, the right to believe what we believe and speak openly, but rarely do we talk about the responsibility of speaking. What people want is to share their ideas without any consequence, as if they are speaking into a comfortable void that will simply absorb their words and nothing more. It's not even an echo chamber, because in an echo chamber, sound bounces back. This is something far worse. And the more we stand in these chambers absorbing all light and sound, the more we stand alone, screaming, even though we cannot hear anything else, over the sound of our own voices. It does not bode well for the future, but we do still have time to stop screaming and to start listening. The only way we're going to be able to do this is by becoming less inelastic, more flexible, more open to difference, more interested in listening to the voices of others rather than simply amplifying our own. Ideological chambers can be dismantled. We can all stop screaming ourselves hoarse and start listening and talking to each other, giving each other the benefit of the doubt, trying to believe that we can work towards some kind of common good. That is a small stand we can all take. And whatever we do next will be that much more likely. And so part of this responsibility of speaking also includes accountability, and accountability never comes easy. Whenever someone is forced to accept consequences for bad behavior, there is this virulent strain of contrarians who bemoan cancel culture. And we're going to talk about that a lot this weekend. They rend their garments about the erosion of the freedom of speech. They lament the good old days when people, mostly white men, could behave badly with impunity. They could be the arbiters of truth and the norms by which we live, and they wouldn't be challenged. But as a current presidential candidate has taken to saying, we are not going back. We have different cultural sensibilities now. We have, hopefully, a more refined sense of what is and is not acceptable in the public sphere. And yes, sometimes we have an inelastic sense of what is and is not acceptable. We have decided, at least publicly, that racism, misogyny, homophobia, transphobia, most any kind of bigotry, is behavior that should be shunned. Common decency is certainly a low bar, but mediocre people find that low bar difficult to reach nonetheless. In truth, cancel culture is for many people a figment of an impoverished imagination. It's the creation of people who believe that criticism of any kind is cancellation. If there is a cancel culture, it exists because we refuse to seriously consider what justice and repair should look like when people fall from grace. And yes, people make mistakes, we all do. But when these mistakes harm others, there should be consequences. There should be an acknowledgement of the harm. There should be contrition and the making of amends. But these things rarely happen. Instead, people either rush to defend and absolve themselves, or people they admire, or they condemn them categorically as if such a thing is even possible. The reason we haven't had enough critical conversation about what rehabilitation might look like is because too many people refuse to first participate in the conversation about why someone might need to rehabilitate themselves. Instead of calling this cancel culture, I like to call it consequence culture. And we should embrace having actual standards and moral clarity. We should bring back shame so that when people behave in shameful ways, they act like it. If we really want to think about cancel culture, think about all of the people who are actually canceled every single day because they're seen as expendable or irrelevant. Think about the people who lose their livelihoods for speaking out against war or police violence or unjust laws, or any of the oppressive forces far too many people must contend with every single day. And then ask yourself, is your favorite public figure canceled, or are they dealing with a temporary inconvenience of their own design? We are all here today at the Festival of Dangerous Ideas, and that is a seductive name for a gathering of interesting and intelligent people. As a culture, we are enamored with this idea of danger, the thrill of something illicit. I felt a real frisson of excitement when I received the invitation to speak here. Most days I live in service of my 4-year-old dog, Max, who is obsessed with me and demands constant adoration, and I happily provide it. So spending some time with dangerous ideas felt like a nice change of pace. But danger means different things to different people. For a child in Gaza, for a lesbian in Uganda, for a family in South Sudan or Haiti or Yemen or Bangladesh, for example, danger is constant and acute. We don't even need to go that far afield. 1 in 4 Australian women have experienced intimate partner violence. 1 in 3 American women have experienced that kind of violence, and most countries bear similar statistics. So let's be clear by what we mean when we talk about danger. There is physical danger, mortal danger, and then far, far removed, there is intellectual danger. For those of us with immense privilege, and all of us here are indeed immensely privileged, we romanticize the danger of ideas, the danger of saying the provocative thing that others are simply too afraid to share. But oftentimes, it's not that others are afraid to share certain ideas. They just possess the correct amount of common sense, shame, and self-preservation to know that some ideas are not dangerous, they're just terrible, ill-conceived, or incoherent, and or racist, or homophobic, or transphobic, and on and on. And even then, the difficulty in these scenarios is not the idea. The difficulty is tolerating the response to the idea. People who romanticize dangerous ideas want to be able to say whatever they want. They want to speak into that void I've been talking about. They want this unquestioning and devout audience. And sometimes they get exactly the audience they deserve. But then there are the rest of us who are sentient and capable of critical thinking. Even more danger. Actual dangerous ideas challenge power structures and systems that maintain the status quo. Actual dangerous ideas lead to imprisonment and oppression. When your ideas are regressive and involve surrendering to the status quo, you're not being dangerous. Instead, you are endangering people. And so there are dangerous ideas, and then there are endangering ideas. There are ideas that bring attention to grievous harms that should be addressed, and there are ideas that cause grievous harms. As I get older, I want to maintain the courage of my convictions, but more importantly, I always, always want to remember the difference between being dangerous and endangering others. And thank you so much.
Roxane Gay, thank you, Roxane, thank you.
Thank you.
We have plenty of time for questions, and there are microphones going to be put on either side of the floor here, so please line up. We'll try and get through as many questions as possible. So that as soon as you see the microphones you can kind of start moving towards the microphones now if you like, or they're just going to be set up here and here. But in the meantime, I've got some questions that I would like to ask you, Roxane. Now, previous trips to Australia have been quite eventful. You only arrived yesterday.
I did.
Has anything happened since you've been here?
Well, I had a nice time in Sydney Airport, standing in line, and this cop with a huge dog walks by me, walks down the line, and then comes back, pats my leg, and tells his dog, "Sniff." I was just like, it was so bad that the people around me gasped. And I was just like, I just want to go to my hotel. Then I leave that area to the biohazard area, and I get pulled over again to be sniffed. Different dog, different guy. So that was special.
So the dogs had gone on their way.
The dog went on his way, minding his own business, being a great dog.
So that was
very good dog.
So that was human disgression.
Yeah, that was absolutely human discretion. And you can't.
Do you know what happened to Eric Andre?
I heard about Eric Andre after, which I was like, oh my God, it's not just me. Great, I'm in good company.
Yes. Well,
and that people apparently at the airports, black people have a fun time here, and such has been the case this time.
So were you like, oh yeah, I'm in Australia?
Yeah, but I could also say the same in the US. I don't think that Australia is uniquely racist. I think that it's all part of a system that is designed to keep black people always remembering that there are many forces working against them.
And just on that, there's been plenty that's happened since the last time you were in Australia.
I've heard. Busy times here in Australia.
Yeah, we all went to vote in a referendum that the result was exactly, I think, as you describe.
Yeah.
In the very short amount of time that we spoke about the referendum, you were able to form an opinion about it. What was the opinion about the result?
Well, it's always surprising to see when referendums like that are shot down, because it's just trying to bring voice to the people who do have a voice, but whose voice is not heard often. And it's about representation. And, as the saying goes, oftentimes people with power view equality as oppression. They don't want an even playing field. So I wasn't surprised that the referendum didn't work out, didn't get passed, but it was disappointing because you would think in this day and age that we would have made more progress toward various forms of equality.
One of the most effective slogans of the No campaign was, if you don't know, vote no.
I mean, I told you the bar is so in hell.
That's the first time you've heard that, actually. So that was a genuine reaction. If you don't know, vote
Yeah,
no.
no, that's the first. I mean, wow. So if you're ignorant, just don't bother.
Yes.
Stay there. Vote no. Oh.
We're lining up for the microphone, so I will take questions. This is an incredible opportunity to speak to Roxane Gay. If you do have a question and you want to ask her opinion about anything, please line up, because this is your chance. Another thing that happened, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because flicking through the contents page, one of the essays is entitled "Cops Don't Belong at Pride."
Yeah, they don't.
The reason I bring this up is because cops were banned from Mardi Gras this year, and then they were allowed to walk in uniform. And the reason for it, I'm sure, we all know, I'm not going to go into too much background, but we lost beautiful queer community members, Jessie Baird and Luke Davies, through an alleged murder, and I'm not going to go through the details. It was a decision by the Mardi Gras board that divided the community, and it is still divided. And this was a community that was uplifted and enriched and emboldened after World Pride last year, and then for this to happen. When I first told you about this, what were your first thoughts?
Well, yeah, I wrote a few years ago an essay about how cops shouldn't be allowed to march in Pride, because there was this debate in New York in particular, but in other cities as well, about how having uniformed cops marching in Pride wasn't necessarily welcome, because throughout queer history, the cops have mostly harmed our communities in a lot of really profound ways. And so a lot of cops got into their fucking feelings, because the minute you tell someone they can't go to something they were already not going to go to, all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, I want to go. And all these gay cops were deep in their feelings too. And I'm like, you choose to be a cop, you don't choose to be gay. So if you really feel like you want to march, take your uniform off. And that was a problem for a lot of people. And, I'm not surprised to hear that there was a similar reaction here. And it's just interesting to see how attached people are to symbols of power. Why do you need to march in the uniform, a uniform that communicates quite a lot to people? And they're not willing to have those conversations, but we can, and we should, because...
What about those who say, but our community is about inclusivity?
Yes, with people who deserve to be included. We always think that inclusivity means not having standards and that it's a free-for-all. And that's not actually what inclusivity means. What inclusivity means is that we create environments that are welcoming to people of all kinds. But if you can't follow basic rules of decency, no, you don't get to be included. And so when you abuse power, when you racially profile, when you kill people who are unarmed, no, you don't get to come to Pride. I know it's fun, but it's not for you.
We have our first question from the floor.
Roxane.
Yes.
My name's Joe, and my psychologist was trying to help me. And I was very, very angry about an American banker that was visiting Sydney walking down Martin Place with two heavies behind him, and it was just after the GFC. And I was carrying around a picture of this guy in my envelope because my business was affected in a very bad way by the fallout from that experience. Mm-hmm. And we know it's minuscule compared with how many others were also affected. And he said to me, when he saw this bottling up of rage, he said, you have to look at the world and the community of the world that we're in like a jungle. And he said, some will always be lions, some will be snakes, some will be this and some will be that. And the job is to navigate life through that environment. Now, if we go through the jungle and poke this one, bash this one, and go, what is happening? We have a situation where there is a whole swathe of the world's population. Sorry, there is a question.
Yes, thank you.
The majority of people who are led by people that we dislike are people who do not have education, and yet you're talking about a rehabilitation. They haven't even got there.
I will reiterate to ask the question, please.
So I'm just asking the role of education right at the beginning. Is that what you suggest?
Thank you.
Because it's a bit unfair at the beginning of a vote.
Thank you very much. We'll ask you to take your seat while Roxane answers.
So, I mean, education is important, but just because people aren't educated doesn't mean they're ignorant. It doesn't mean that they don't have intelligence. And if you don't know, vote no, that's not about education. That's a group of people predicating that we don't actually have anything to offer, so just vote against this thing because we don't want to bother to tell you what you're actually voting on or for because we don't have any good reasons. And so, like, if we're using the metaphor of the jungle and, like, everyone's a predator or prey, that's not actually always the case. There are plenty of jungles that are being saved by environmentalists who understand that they hold valuable ecosystems that can save lives. And so instead of thinking about how we forge our way through communities, instead think about how we exist within them and exist copacetically. And is education part of that? Yes, absolutely. But it's not all about education. There are plenty of people who just want to hold on to power in one way or another. And you can be educated or uneducated, it's indifferent to them. And also, people know when they're being stepped on. You don't need a degree, you don't need anything to know when someone's foot is on your neck.
Thank you for turning that around. And I probably should have said in the beginning, please get to your question very quickly, otherwise we're going to shout you down.
Otherwise, this audience is on top of it. Normally I have a spiel about this is not your blog, but you guys were on top of it. Very well done.
Okay, we're going to take another question from this side and then over here.
Oh, hello. First of all, thank you so much for your time, Roxane. It's such a pleasure to hear you speak. It's such an honour to
thank you.
Hear your wisdom, so thank you. My question is, how important is it to have conversations with difficult, polarising people, and how do you get through it when you're just like,
I get asked that a lot, and there are people out there, God bless them, who will sit down and talk with the Klan person over there and the old racist over there, and I appreciate them, but I don't need to talk to them personally. I'm almost 50 years old, and TikTok. How do I want to spend my precious life? And I already know what they think. And the thing is, oftentimes what we ask in these difficult conversations is to see me as human. See that I have as much value as you. And when you have to advocate for your humanity to people who don't believe you have some, yes, once in a while you can reach someone, but I find that most of those conversations are wasted. I try to spend my time talking to people who are just apathetic, who are indifferent, who feel disenfranchised. because they've been abandoned or they feel abandoned. Like, that's someone you can reach. But someone who's like, yeah, you don't deserve a right to vote, which is something that's happening in the US, like, I don't think we have much to talk about.
What about if you're related to the person?
Yeah.
Like,
I'm sorry, but you can't talk to daddy anymore. No, but that's a good question, and it's hard when you're related to like that person who has some bigoted views. And fortunately, my family's pretty great. But when we've had sticky conversations, like my parents are in their late 70s, and so I've had to help them along the way in terms of understanding queerness and transness. And I just try to be gentle and remember where they come from. I mean, they're Catholics from Haiti who were born in the 1940s. So like, let's all manage our expectations. But that said, I expect the best from them, the way they expect the best from me. And they have come all the way around and have understood, like, yes, no, we need to embrace everyone. And so you can have these different conversations, you can respect where people are at, but you can also expect them to do better.
And I love how you dedicated this book for my mother, who first taught me that my opinions matter.
Yes, my mom's amazing, and
gorgeous.
she did teach me that.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Yes.
Professor Gay, first, thank you very much for excellent presentation. I actually listened very carefully, and I've picked up on some very serious points you threw in between very entertaining presentation. So my question will go to the gist of, I'm actually a person right now who is running live Modern Australia's possible biggest racial discrimination case. And I'm approaching it from benefit of my good education, so I've been blessed, as you said. What I found, and that's what my question is, that I found as a most devastating factor, taking a fight to those so-called right-wing conservatives, and I want to get your perspective. I don't know if you know Brown University Professor Glenn Lowry, John McWhorter, they're
yes.
very prominent, and you would understand why I'm mentioning it.
Yes.
By the way, tomorrow there is Coleman.
Your question, please. This is great. I've never been in an audience like this, so that's great. Okay, your question.
Being much real. So my question really is, what I found out, I've actually wrote to Professor McWhorter, when you actually put back their own words, where they accuse left-wing of shutting down conversation, they actually demonstrate exactly the same sins. And
your question,
my question
please.
is,
Yes.
have you tried to actually expose them on their hypocrisy? Because that is something that has never been done before.
Oh, it's done all the time. In that people
thank you, sir. You can take your seat.
People like Glenn Lowry, John McWhorter, they're entitled to their opinions, but I think that we don't have to expose their hypocrisy because they do it all on their own. Like, it's right there on the page. And what you'll notice oftentimes with these people is exactly as this gentleman says, when you press back, when you push back even a little, it completely falls apart. They have no real substance behind their arguments. And I also think that's important to show, because you can disagree on lots of different things, you can disagree, but you need to have reasons why, and it can't just be because I said so. And unfortunately, we don't often have the opportunity to have substantive conversations about much of anything. I think a lot of it is social media, which has sort of distilled everything to character limits, and people sort of decide, oh, I watched a TikTok, so I'm an expert and I can go shoe a horse now. And true story, I do think I could do it. But, you know, we just have to remember that we owe it to ourselves to bring substance to our conversations.
For those on the live stream, to give a full appreciation of how great this audience is in the room, if you don't get to the question quickly enough, what will the audience do? Yes, you can hear that, can't you? Okay, so look, don't let that discourage the people who are lining up to ask the questions.
Well, absolutely, because the young woman here actually brought her notepad, which means she was prepared.
Yes, that's right. This is great. Okay, yes.
You spoke about mental health.
Yeah.
What does we as a community need to do? Because on the one hand, we have to respect the fact that they have their civil liberties, but at the other hand, we don't want them writing abusive text and being violent to you. So you said before the guy had mental health. What do we as a community need to do? We can't lock them up, but what can we actually proactively do about mental health issues?
Well, one of the things I tried to make clear in my speech was, he was both mentally ill and racist. And so a lot of times people say he or she or they are mentally ill, and that excuses what they've done. And so you can address the racism. You can say, like, there should be consequences for someone who sends like 100 emails a day. And unfortunately, in the US particularly, there are not. You are not really able to push back or do anything until they do something to you, which is a horrible way to live, like sort of waiting. But we do need to figure out, how do we separate mental illness from bigotry? And then how do we make sure that the consequences that we apply are for the bigotry or for bad behaviors, not for mental illness? And of course, part of that means that we need a more robust mental health care system that helps everyone. And some people don't want to be helped, and that's also their right. But we have such, and I would say it's probably similar here in Australia as to the US, such we don't spend enough money on mental health care, and we don't advocate for it to the communities that most need it. And so until we have a base level of mental health care for everyone, we can't even like have these granular conversations that are absolutely necessary. But like, first, let's make sure that everyone who wants therapy or needs medication or other kinds of mental health assistance can actually get it. And so I do think we start with mental health and then deal with the behaviors.
I'm not sure how I'm going to articulate this, but what happens in situations where mental health concerns are raised after someone has said something racist or misogynistic, or an incident has happened? Because it does happen quite a lot,
all the time.
And then the person then avoids public scrutiny and accountability.
I personally am at just a point in my life where I'm just like, that's well and good, but for example, bipolar disorder does not make one racist. I know plenty of people that deal with mental health issues. I deal with depression, and it doesn't make me go do terrible things. When people use mental health as a shield, it's so harmful, not only to them, but to everyone, and to people who are really grappling with these issues and absolutely manage to not be bigoted. And so I think it's important to call it out. Don't let them use it as a weapon instead of a shield. And that's what they're doing. They're trying to shield themselves, but they're actually using mental health as a weapon, as a way of saying, I get to do whatever I want because I'm unwell. And no, you get to be treated if you are unwell, and you also get to face consequences if you are a bigot.
Hi, Roxane. I'm a bit nervous, so I'm gonna read. If that's
absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
As a writer, do you set personal boundaries on topics you discuss to ensure both your safety and well-being? Like, how do you balance being honest and your responsibility as a media person and taking care of your well-being and your emotions?
Yes,
basically?
that's a great question. Thank you. And a question. I have very firm boundaries. A lot of times people think that they know me, and you don't know me at all. And I get why you might think you do, because I wrote a memoir, because I wrote these essays, but you know what I'm willing for you to know. But there are certain things that I absolutely keep out of my writing. My family loves their privacy, and just because I choose to be a writer doesn't mean that the world gets to know every detail about them, and I really respect that boundary. I definitely am married. My wife is also a public figure in her own right, but I don't write a lot about the day-to-day of our relationship because that's for us. And also, like, once people get in your business, they get in your business. And so whatever I'm willing to put into the world is something that I've probably dealt with enough on my own to handle people sort of tromping through that garden. And it's just really, this is the only area of my life where I'm good with boundaries, because the audience is so significant that I can't risk not being firm. But it is hard because people always want to tear down boundaries. Like, I don't like to be hugged. I hate it. And I wrote about it in Hunger, and people will still come up to me like, can I hug you? Like, girl, no. You absolutely cannot. And I feel terrible, but like at the same time, I don't know you, like, ooh. I am fine with handshaking though.
Thank you very much for that question. And did you keep your vows private?
Yes, I did. We eloped. And so we had been planning this huge 450-person wedding. I know, but 150 of those guests were mine. And so what I'll say is that my wife is a very social person. I actually task her to go make the friends and then bring them back. And so we had this huge thing planned, and we had put down deposits, and then COVID happened, and lost all that money. It's fine. And I mean, it's not, but it is. Like, what can you do? You have it to lose. And so we decided, like, why not just do it? And so we went to a justice of the peace in California and exchanged our own vows, and no, we have never shared them.
I was just asking for a friend, is all.
Yeah. You might tell your friend she should share the news that she's freshly married. To an incredible person. And you can also keep the vows private while celebrating 2 weeks married.
Thank you. Thank you, Roxane. How cool. In fact, Roxane was one of the first people in the world for me to introduce Karina as my wife. So that's
and
so
isn't
special.
that a great phrase, my wife? Like,
Yes.
ooh, get a little frisson.
special.
I'm like, yes.
We'll take these questions and no more, so please don't join the end of the line. Yes.
Hello, Roxane. Hi. I'm 27. I'm from the tiny island nation of Mauritius. I run this very small podcast where I address taboo issues. Last year in October of 2023, I received a couple of death threats because of the things that I was addressing, and pictures of me were just all over social media with tons of defamation in my regards. My question to you is, how do you keep going?
Yeah. That's a great question, and it's hard. I could have written a whole talk just about that. I've been struggling with it. It's been really hard because I don't think that my opinions are that controversial. They're not. And I mean, like, whenever people are like, oh, you're so leftist, I wish. Like, leftist people are fucking leftist. And I'm a Libra. So it's really hard. And when you start to feel unsafe, and then, you know, the thing about images on the internet is that people do all kinds of unspeakable things with them. And it just gets old, and oftentimes I just think, I know I'm not being paid enough for this, and it just doesn't seem worth it. And I really do oftentimes think maybe I should just quit. And what keeps me going is stubbornness, in part, and like that's what they want. What they're trying to do is bully you out of doing your podcast and tackling these difficult issues. They want to silence you. And so I try to remember that, but you also need to protect yourself. And so it's not that you should consider quitting, but just ask yourself, what are the systems I can put in place so that I can increase my tolerance for the kinds of pushback that I'm going to get? And so for me, I left Twitter, which was the best thing I could have ever done. And I also stopped reading my Google alerts. Just because people have feedback does not mean you have to receive it. And so don't put yourself in a position, I used to think I have to see it all so I know it's out there. Actually, I don't need to know that it's out there. And whenever people bring me that bad news, I'm like, that's not what a friend does. I don't need to know what so-and-so over there thinks about me. So limit your exposure to that kind of feedback because you're not in an echo chamber. People like I trust give me all kinds of healthy criticism. Bob 794 is not doing that.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Congratulations, Nerelda.
Oh, thanks.
So back to Roxane. First of all, thank you so much for your beautiful and articulate expression. It's been a joy to hear. And also,
thank you.
I'm really sorry to hear, and for our other questioners, the aggressions and horror, that stuff's horrible. I'm really sorry to hear that. My question is really on a more different tack, I suppose. What is it that, what do you think it would take for the US to get serious electoral reform? Here we enjoy an independent electoral commission, compulsory voting, and a system which enables people to vote, and democracy sausages. Like, what would it take over there to get some sort of sense?
A revolution? Like, that's a really important question, and I think about it a lot. And I do think this election is the beginning of potential. Because what Kamala Harris's candidacy is showing us is that we don't need a 2-year election cycle. Most of the world does not do 2-year election cycles, 1-year election cycles, or even 6-month election cycles. It should just be like Canada, 2 weeks and we're done, wrapped up. And so I'm hoping that, and I wrote about this recently, I just hope that people take some lessons from her running. Now, she's the establishment candidate, so it's not like that she's this wildly different candidate. But we are seeing that you should primary incumbents, that you should make people have to articulate why they deserve to be president, that we should be able to vote for someone, not just against someone, and that we have to really rethink campaign finance, which is not a new thing, but until you can start, like, really it's whoever earns the most money, whoever raises the most money wins. And until we change that, nothing else really matters in American electoral politics. But we just have so much work to do. I don't even know where to start, but I would love to start with the money.
Kamala's speech yesterday was an incredible sight to behold, but
Yes.
was the absence of talk of Palestine during the DNC the elephant in the room?
Oh my God, it was like the elephant, it was the room. And it was just, I'm totally down for Kamala because look at the fucking alternative. But I just don't know how you can witness what's happening in Gaza and know that the United States and other countries are literally providing the bombs and then she led with Israel has a right to defend itself, which yes, but 40, 50,000 people are dead, and the majority of them are children. And I just can't believe that it's still considered like dangerous to articulate that. It's terrible.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks for your insights so far. My question is, we touched on racism, on queer challenges, etc. Don't you think that identity politics shifts away the conversation that should be more on focusing on challenging the growth-driven capitalist system, that it's exploitative in nature? Because, for example, often we have populist, racist movements that might be just a rebound effect of capitalism that delocalized jobs and so on. Do you think that we should maybe tackle more the socioeconomic systems in place?
No, because I think that identity politics is an easy way to dismiss the reality that capitalism affects us all differently. And so you can't separate capitalism and who we are and the bodies we live in based on all kinds of things. Like capitalism is this force that affects us all, but it affects us all quite differently. And so we have to keep that in mind.
Thank you. Yes.
I work for a state government agency, and I have found over the years the language of black, white, women of colour, people of colour, particularly since George Floyd for Victorian state government in my area, there's this influx of labelling. So in meetings, it's as an able-bodied man, and I'm thinking white man, I'm like, oh no, you're just showing off. Oh, you women of colour, there's a meeting for you. Or I've worked with African families, and I say, which ones? Which ones? Which language? Which ethnicity? But I'm fighting this tide at work of this acceptance of the fact that we are mere blacks, whites and coloureds. And is it a dangerous idea to push back on that?
No, it's not. I actually understand where you're coming from, and I actually notice this a lot with my students. They lead first with identity. And like I said, I'm 49, I'm gonna be 50 in a couple months. And so for my generation, Gen X, what's up? A lot of times I think it's a little baffling because they give me this whole list of identity markers before they get into like what they actually want to say, which is oftentimes like, I'm gonna be late with turning in my homework. And so I think part of what we need to do is recognize where this comes from. The reason that so many people are starting to identify who they are is because who they are has been ignored or maligned for so long that they want to lead with it and treat it as a celebration and an acknowledgement. But it's not the only thing. And I do think that there are times when it can sort of distract or keep people from actually addressing the actual issues at hand. And so I think you have to be strategic, like really think through what are you pushing back against and what are you advocating for? And use that as the framework for how you proceed. Like, what are you really trying to get at? What is the better way forward that you want to see? And what do you need to do to get there, or to help other people get there with you? And so I would take it from there, rather than telling people, like, don't lead with identity, etc., because we don't want to go back. And I do think that there's a compromise between only leading with identity and like having all of these like lists of things that we are, and not. There's middle ground. And so I think it's important to find that middle ground. Like I said, Libra.
Last question from the room.
Hi Roxane, my name's Ali. My original question I came up to ask has kind of already been answered, so I'm just going to expand on it a little bit. What advice would you give to a woman who works in a very, very male-dominated environment, who is ready and feels this need to challenge the ingrained organisational misogyny? How do we find the courage to challenge that when even the highest-ranking people men in our organisations who call themselves progressive are so indoctrinated they cannot see the misogyny around them?
Yeah. Like, girl, when you figure that out, let me know. You know, it's hard. I am asked this question a lot. A lot of times it's like women who work in engineering, STEM, like science, math, all of the, lots of the industries are male dominated, but it tends to be in those industries in particular.
This one's military.
Same thing, yeah. And it's hard, and nobody likes to face the fact that they have something someone else doesn't. Because the minute you point out, oh my God, look at this privilege you have, you're immediately like, I've written about this, I've felt this knee-jerk reaction to say, yeah, but here are the ways in which I'm not privileged. And so when you approach these conversations, it's important to say, I'm not asking you to take away any of your sorrows or like whatever you're dealing with, but bro, you've got like some advantages here that I will never have, particularly because I have to have this conversation with you instead of doing my actual job. And I find that when you can sort of frame it in that, like, look what you're making me do. Look what you're making me, like how you're making me expend my energy instead of, doing my job. Because when you're marginalized, oftentimes your second and third and fourth jobs are like educating the people around you, advocating for equality and equity, and having to raise the alarm about toxic behaviors. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, why are you always like that? Why are you so militant? Why can't you just lighten up? Like, how much more would you like us to lighten up? It's hard. So it's your job and you don't want to lose it. But like, I find that just calling it out when you can is really important, and also get some allies. Are there other women or non-binary people that you can ally with? And even, are there any other men in the organization that have common sense and can recognize
Thank you so much for that
misogyny?
question. And along the same lines, there are people who identify as feminists,
yes,
who have attempted to destroy the likes of Iman Khalif, who then went on to win a gold medal.
Yes.
Roxane Tickle, who the trans woman who yesterday had a win in court here in Sydney against Giggle for Girls. The court found that she was discriminated against by being excluded from the online platform. Can TERFs call themselves feminists?
No. I mean, they will. You can't stop anyone from calling themselves what they are. But I just think anytime the word exclusionary is in your definition of feminism, then it's not feminism. And it's always important to ask, what do you think you're defending? How do you think you're defending womanhood by doing this? I can't proclaim to understand TERFs. I find them to be bewildering. People who you think are rational and normal seem to lose all sense of reality and perspective when it comes to trans people and their lives.
Can you call yourself a feminist if you don't support Palestine?
Yeah, no, you can't. Because, I mean, hopefully, when we're doing our feminism as well as possible, we are trying to make the world equitable and safe for everyone. And the reality is that when women are treated better throughout the world, everyone is treated better. When we pay women well, everyone's economic circumstances improve. When we support childcare, everyone's lives improve. And so, yes, as feminists, we have to care about Palestine as much as we care about our own local communities.
We have less than a minute left. In your speech, you mentioned J-Lo.
Yes.
Should she have gone back to Ben?
Listen, I'm so devastated about this J-Lo thing. I don't know why I have this weird parasocial relationship with Ben Affleck and J-Lo, but I was so happy when they got back together. I was just like, oh my God, they're gonna make it. What frustrates me is that he's complaining about the same thing this time that he complained about last time, like I wasn't prepared for her fame. Like, Ben. Your ex-wife is Jennifer Garner, who's hugely famous. You are massively famous. You are so famous that Dunkin' Donuts built a campaign around you. Yes, J-Lo's famous, but you knew that going in. You just don't like not being the star of the show.
Oh, what a great way to end. Please put your hands together for Roxane Gay.
This session was recorded live at Carriageworks Sydney in August 2024. The Festival of Dangerous Ideas is presented by the Ethics Centre. The Ethics Centre delivers programs and experiences designed to bring ethics to the centre of our life. We offer counselling for individuals, leadership and development services, events, courses and educational resources. As a not-for-profit charity, we rely heavily on donations and memberships. Please visit ethics.org.au to find out more. Thank you.